that just happened.
Shameless.
I just happened to bring that up. Sorry.
It's really good.
So,
Thank you.
no, shucks, you're welcome. As we said, we're going to spend the first part of the time just communicating, just chatting about things at church and whatnot. And then the latter part of the time, plenty of still time left, I'm sure, we will deal with questions. Any kind of questions you want to ask about the message today, about life, about whatever. So, but do go ahead and send those in. The sooner you get them in, the sooner we can see them and respond to them. Remember, you can do that on Facebook if you're watching on Facebook, or you can email us. You can email me at justin.huffman@morningstarfellowship.ca.
And are you going to be checking that?
I'm going to check it in a moment.
Okay.
Right now, I'm not checking it yet.
Okay.
I will. I promise to do that though. So therefore, send in an email question or a Facebook question. Either one would be wonderful. So, as far as communication, I thought we would talk today about the lockdown, because one thing is in society, it's a bit of a touchy question. It's a kind of thing where people often have strong opinions, but they don't feel comfortable, or either one, they don't feel comfortable to express those opinions because things are so, often tense about it, or they do feel comfortable to express them, don't care what anybody thinks, and don't even necessarily like anybody who disagrees with them. So what we want to do is make sure that we're modeling healthy conversation about that. As middle children, Cho and I both, used to making sure all the siblings get along, we want to model for you. We want to genuinely just chat a bit about the lockdown and about masks and about COVID and all that stuff. So I know, yeah, I'm not really gonna say much. I'm depending on you to.
You don't want me to say. I'm not.
No, I'm kidding.
I'm the opinionated one
No,
in the relationship.
No, I'm not pretending that I'm going to solve all those issues. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we want to be able to talk about those issues in a healthy way, and that includes within our church. So, in case you're not aware, and who knows who you are, you may be unaware of the other perspective, but there are people within our church, believe it or not, who are all over the place on this issue.
Well, they're not all over the place. We have people on.
That's what I meant to say.
Okay.
What did I say?
Well, not an individual that is all over the place.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that. Yeah, good point.
I think it's just a misplaced modifier, but go ahead.
Oh, well, shucks. So let me place my modifier in the right place and say we have peoples, each individual of whom might be. No, I'm kidding. We have people on, I wouldn't say both extremes, but I would say on both ends of reasonableness, So, as far as I know, we don't have anybody who's being unreasonable about it.
Because extreme carries with it negative connotations.
Exactly. I wouldn't, and genuinely, there are extremes where maybe somebody's just being, just incredibly naive or something on either side. But at least in my conversations, I've not run into anybody who is unreasonable about it. But we definitely have people on both sides of perspective. If you have a needle measuring caution in relation to COVID, we have people over here, and we have people over here.
Yeah.
And so I think it's healthy to talk about it because we are locked down. We only 10 people, as you know, today were allowed into the building, and as a church, we're honoring that because the government has asked us to do that. But it's a valid question to say, how long do you keep doing that? Because now we're 8 months into COVID, and I remember when we first began this thing, I remember them saying in March, we'll shut down for 2 or 3 weeks and flatten the curve, and then so on. I don't think anybody anticipated that we'd be 8 months and still under, in fact, not just still under restriction, but going backwards. So it's a valid question to say, of course, if the government just flat out said, you can no longer meet anymore, we would know that's not right. So it's a good question to say 8 months into this, at what point does it become too long, right? Too long to not meet, too long to not do church, not be the church. I'm not pretending that I have the answer, but I think that's a valid question to ask. It's also, of course, legitimate to have concern about COVID, about wanting to be a good witness. One, just wanting to be a good neighbor. Like if you're concerned about COVID and want to make sure that other people don't, contract it or spread it or any of those things, then that's loving your neighbor. Also, it's a good witness in the sense of it could be argued that it's a good witness because there are people who, the society around us in general is trying to deal with COVID as well, and it shows that we care about our community.
On the other hand, you could use that same argument, love your neighbor. The first commandment is love God. The second commandment is love neighbor. So if you're not doing what the Word of God commands you to do first,
are you really loving your neighbor?
Ooh,
good point.
No.
Oh, wow, okay. The opinions are coming out now, people. No. So, anyway, I thought of this, then I forgot to look it up. But I thought I would read to you just a few snippets of things that at least pastors, there's a group of local pastors who discuss on a local group and just discuss some of these issues together, and they're challenging issues, I have to admit. And so, no pastor went to seminary and took a class on how do you handle lockdown and pandemic, So everybody's sort of just scrambling and praying and going forward on their knees as pastors, and of course as churches as well. So of course, because you didn't take a class either on this, none of us have in that sense been prepared for it. So one pastor observes this: there are so many overlapping issues. Apart from theology, it depends on how serious you consider the virus to be. And then when you get to theology, you have, as one pastor has observed, 4 issues at least. The importance of worship. So that's one thing. Hebrews 10:25 tells us not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together. And I think that is important to take that in context, that it's assuming an assembly and telling individuals not to forsake the assembly when it's happening. It's not saying never, shut down a Sunday or something like that. That's not what that command is talking about. Yet, it does assume an assembly that you can attend. And of course, Christians in persecuted countries even today go through tremendous danger, risk, in order to meet together, even though the government tells them not to, those kind of things. So, and that's of course been the case for all the history of the church. So, but the importance of worship is the first thing. Second, love for neighbor. That's what we were talking about just now, Mark 12:31. Obedience to government. That's Romans 13. That we're to pray for the rulers over us, and we're to obey the authority that God has put over us. All those kind of things. And 4, maintaining a good witness. So Colossians 4, 5, and 6, that we are to have a good witness, to the community around us. So we want to be careful that we're taking all those things into consideration. And yet, as you were just pointing out so well, you could take it on either end. You could say, well, in order to love your neighbor and obey the government and maintain a good witness, then for temporarily, we don't diminish the importance of worship, but we postpone the benefits of worship until a later time. Or, as you were saying, we could also say the importance of worship speaks to our love for God and speaks about how crucial the church is Jesus' idea. It's not our idea. It's not like we came out and we said, hey, we should probably all get together on a regular basis. This is Jesus' idea. And this is, throughout the New Testament. And a way to love your neighbor is to keep doing that, maybe, and to some degree, of course. In the long term, there's no question. The way to love your neighbor is to emphasize the importance of worship, and that God is worth whatever risk that it takes in order to serve Him. Obedience to government. Yes, obey your rulers as unto the Lord, just like you obey every authority as an under authority to the Lord. You don't obey the authority in place of obeying the Lord. And we have all these clear commands of meeting to worship and maintaining a good witness. How can you be a good witness if you're doing the same thing everybody else is doing? Maybe you could be a good witness by doing something different and saying, we actually aren't afraid of COVID. We love God, and we're going to meet regardless of whatever. So you can definitely see it from. People do see it from both sides, right. And good, solid
people
Christians.
We love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's exactly right. And people we love, and so therefore I want to say, anybody who's speaking like just ill or unkindly or condescendingly about the other side is speaking bad about a brother and sister in Christ and about a friend of mine, right?
Right.
So we're not trying to take sides. We're just trying to genuinely flesh out some of the genuine concerns that are there on both sides, and just recognize that as a church, we've got to be willing to have conversations where we don't shut down the other side as if there's no other legitimate viewpoint than ours when it comes to this question, this issue. So, I feel like we solved that. Did we solve that? No, we didn't even come close, did we? Never mind. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, but my point is, and this is really what I was getting at with the announcement, or not the announcement, but just the opening remarks this morning, is just that it is completely understandable to have questions about the continued lockdown. It's completely okay to follow the rules about the lockdown, but what we can't do is neglect the means of grace that God has given us. Right now, there's lots of our ordinary means of grace that God has established for us are still in place. You can still read your Bible every day. You can still pray every day. You can still reach out to your neighbors with the gospel every day. You can still fellowship with members of the local body of Christ. In fact, we have a way of trying to do that intentionally, which is called care partners, where you covenant together with another person outside of your family to follow up with each other on a regular basis and just check up on each other and encourage each other in the Lord. So we should definitely be doing that, and we should also at least be having conversations that recognize each other's differences in relation to this and move together forward in a way that now ultimately, of course, you can't move together in a way that's going to please everybody, because what we just described are two very different opinions about COVID. So whatever you do, you're sort of in a sense going to be reflecting some conviction there. But what we have to be willing to do is to move ahead together with differences, even if our particular strong preference or strong even conviction in relation to this it differs from that of others in the church, and in fact differs from what course the church eventually takes, even, or whatever.
I'm so thankful for the unity and spirit that our church has, the way they affirm each other and love each other. I don't feel like if you had, we'll just use both examples, you had the no mask, this is, against my religious liberties, I should be able to go to worship. I don't think those people would say, and you people that are high risk and concerned should take off your masks and get in the church building. No. I don't think they would say that. And I don't think the people that are concerned about the virus and feel like they should be staying home and protecting loved ones, I don't think they would say, I don't think that you other people should ever get together and worship corporately.
And just to be clear, mask, no mask is not the same question as meat, no meat.
No,
those are different.
Generally,
they probably are a lot of overlap, but not necessarily the same.
Right, I shouldn't have put that in.
No, I'm just saying.
I was trying to make up
I don't want to stereotype anybody's all I'm saying.
A pretend group, but people that lean towards going and fellowshipping together as a body, actually together, and people that lean towards continuing at home worshiping by way of live stream and being cautious.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you point that out. In fact, I've never seen anybody be in our church be unkind to each other in face to face about this. What you do see, and I'm not talking about in our church specifically, but just in society, is you see people who would be kind to each other face to face, expressing super strong opinions online or on social media or whatever, that makes it sound as if they would be, totally disagreeing with anybody who disagreed, totally against anybody who disagreed with them. But yeah, I agree. I'm so thankful for the spirit in our church that I've only observed people who are, willing to, talk through things, listen to each other, be kind to one another, be thoughtful of each other, and I just want to encourage that really, and just say, hey, that's the way it should be. Mm-hmm. And I'm thankful. I know there are churches who, over the last 8 months, this has been a real sort of fireball of tension. Like it has been in society. It's certainly been that in some churches as well. I haven't felt that at all in our church, and I'm thankful for that. I just want to also recognize, though, that
you haven't felt the unkind tension. Felt the differences, but not any lack of charity or love.
Yeah, and that's the way it ought to be. And we ought to continue having conversations. We ought to even being able to model for society around us who can't seem to figure it out, honestly, because they don't have the love of God. How do you have conversations lovingly, kindly, thoughtful about each other? That there's not a lot of that always.
Honestly, this issue in itself isn't an isolated issue in that it's the only issue that our church is ever going to have where we have two people. I vote this way, I vote this way, I can't be your friend, or...
This is not the only issue? I was hoping this would be the only issue ever that we'll ever disagree on.
I'm from this culture, we can't be friends. I mean, that's part of what makes Morningstar so beautiful, is we've got just a group of very culturally, socially, everything diverse people that come together, and our common ground is Jesus Christ. And so it's important to keep that the center of everything, including this COVID nightmare.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Okay, as I said, I promised that I would check my email. 0 questions so far. Must be that we did solve all of the COVID issues. I'm thankful for that.
We have no questions online either.
Wow. Okay.
I hope you guys still love us.
Yeah. No, I bet it. I hope. What I hope does not happen is everybody tunes in at 1 and is like, "What is happening?" Because we may very well have missed everybody with the 12:30 move, and I'm sorry. By the way, we're going to keep this 12:30 time slot as long as we're sort of shut down again, because there's just no. It's much more convenient if you're streaming 11 to just go straight to the 12:30 time slot for coffee with Pastor Justin rather than waiting till 1. So we're going to keep 12:30 will be our time until we crank up another 11 o'clock in-person service, and then it changes and we'll go back to 1. So do put that on your on your mental calendar for every Sunday. Instead of 1 p.m. that'll be 12:30. So it may be that nobody's watching this, or they'll watch it at 1, in which case we'll be off.
Then we don't have to deal with the questions.
Yeah, that's right. We'll just be off, enjoying the sunny day while everybody else sweats out the questions. So, all right. Anything else to talk about?
No, I'm sorry we don't have an answer.
Yeah.
I really miss being together. I feel pretty sick to my stomach about not getting to be together. But try to do things that you can do. Like yesterday was such a blessing for me to go caroling. In Durham, we all got out. When we went into Toronto, the rules are different. We, piled up sort of like tailgating parties. Do they have those here? Tailgating parties? I assume so. I don't know. Anyway, we sat in the back of our car and sang to make sure we didn't get over the limit. So try to think creatively about ways. I mean, of course, there's the Care Partner initiative that Justin was mentioning, but try to think creatively about how you can be together, because it's really, really important to be with believers.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things, so if we take those same 4 things that we just talked about, you could at the very least, we can obey some of the spirit of all of those right now, regardless of what position we take. And that is, 1, we can affirm the importance of fellowship and worship even if we're not able to meet. One, by showing up regularly for live stream, and you know, in other words, on Sunday we are still set aside time for worship on the Lord's Day with our family. So you are saying worship matters, right?
Yeah.
Another thing is going out of your way to make sure you do fellowship with other people and encourage each other in the Lord and that kind of thing. You can love your neighbor. You can be a good witness. You can honor the authority, regardless of where you are. Even if even for a church that decides they're going to be civilly disobedient or something, and you could still do that in a spirit that is honoring the government. Not speaking badly of the government, not ripping the government up and down, but just saying with respect, this is our conviction. So really, no matter where you fall on those, all of those are things you have to consider and strive for now. Like you can't put them off and say, well, one day all four of those, we're going to line them all up,
Yeah.
Even now it's a good thing to be keeping in mind. What can you do to value worship right now? What can you do to value fellowship right now? So
one question: How do you take?
What?
How do you take your coffee, Pastor Justin?
Wow, you guys asked the hard
Going
ones.
easy on us.
Yeah, that was a good one. They're like, change the subject, quick. No. Let's see. So, since you asked, no, I take a splash of milk. If I'm at home, I take a splash of milk because we have a milk frother. So, here's the thing. Coffee has to be hot. That's my number one thing. There's no point in drinking coffee that isn't hot. And so if you're going to pour cold milk or cream or whatever into the coffee, there's 0 point in that in my mind because you're just lowering the temperature. So what you have to do is, you're looking at me like, well, they asked, so I have to explain.
No, I'm more finicky about it than you are.
Okay, you can explain how you do the coffee.
I'm not going to explain it. Yeah.
So temperature is what matters most. At home, I have a milk frother where I can raise the temperature of the milk, put a little bit of milk in with the coffee, still have a strong coffee taste. No, none of that mamby-pamby candy sugar stuff. This
is Julius, by
strong. Julius.
Oh,
so he agrees then.
Yeah.
I don't know how he takes his coffee, but he agrees
really
that coffee is
hear
important.
About your coffee.
So what? I assume that there was a genuine interest.
Go ahead, just speed it up because we actually have a real
Okay, all right. And so if I'm not at home and you cannot heat the coffee, then the answer is black.
Yeah. I kind of wish that I like the double because I feel kind of like I'm on the Canadian in crowd because now I know that
is like not
little double, but yeah, I don't.
That's not on my radar.
I don't like double in my coffee, so I'll just every now and then I'll say, "You want some coffee? Double?" Not for me, thank you. Okay, next. Some Christians who disagree with government restrictions in church attendance. Any thoughts?
Say it one more time.
Some Christians disagree with government restrictions in church attendance. Any thoughts?
On church attendance. Gotcha. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, someone was just telling me, I didn't even know this, so I'm just speaking out of ignorance here and hearsay, so take it with a grain of salt. But someone was just telling me this morning that the Supreme Court of the United States just heard a case in relation to this and upheld the right for the church to be able to, for churches to be able to assemble. That same right is inculcated, to be sure, in the Canadian Charter as well.
Yeah.
And so it is a valid question to say, are you obeying the authority over you by when you allow the government to do all these constraints, or are you obeying the authority over you when you hold to the charter right that you have and say, no. There's a reason why this was in here, because we have to have the ability to worship. If you get rid of the ability to worship, your society's gone. So I would say that it's a valid question again. And I think not just valid in the sense of you're okay and you're okay. I don't mean like that. I mean valid in the sense of everyone should be asking that question. Should at least be asking the question. How you answer the question might come down different for different Christians, but at least ought to be asked, is it okay for the government to restrain worship? And if it is okay, how long does that keep being okay? And in what context is that okay? Those kind of things.
And maybe, I know...
And I'm not talking about because of our rights. That's not what I mean.
No.
I'm talking about for the sake of worship.
Right.
For the sake of religious liberty per se. I'm not talking about just politically. I'm talking about for church's sake, for our own
Maybe
sake.
it might be a good time with regard to communicating with the church to let them know that we are exploring those things through this group of people that you. Do you want to
Yeah,
talk
I mean,
about
I'm not connected in Canada, obviously, to
But
to MPs and that kind of thing. But a lot of good
Grace
godly
Church.
pastors are reaching out to MPs, writing letters, letting the government know, hey, for one, it's very important to know that there is zero evidence that any church in Canada has been some sort of super spreader event. So in other words, we have had very cautious, very careful, cleansed services, and there's a benefit to that. There's been no outbreaks at any church, and so that ought to be known and ought to be reflected, one would think, in the restraints
But
and
what I'm
restrictions.
trying to say is that on behalf of some of the local churches, there are pastors that are following this up the chain and saying, hey, this is what the studies show, this is what the rights are, we are following the regulations for now, but we would like to see this changed. If not, we're considering doing something else. Just so that the congregation doesn't feel like, well, we're not even addressing the bigger issues, or we're not even thinking about the bigger issues. There is consideration for bigger things that are going on. We're just
good point.
Can you?
You said it pretty much. I mean,
Okay.
we're not like legally pursuing. We're not suing the government or something, but we are communicating with the government as local churches. And in fact, there's a very good, strong letter from FEB, our denomination, our FEB Central Director, even this week, saying we are contacting the government to communicate to them concern about these restrictions and the continuation of them. And so I just want, it's wise.
It's a
I'm
good
glad
thing
you're
to
saying
communicate, because I, as a church member, would feel very frustrated if I didn't feel like
you're just going along with this without asking any questions.
Anything.
Yeah, good point.
I think it's good to communicate that to people so they know we're doing our best to try to.
That's right.
Come up with some solutions.
Yeah, that's right.
Longer term solutions.
And by the way, when the doors do open again, it's good to know there's been no proof whatsoever. I mean, proof, evidence. There's been no cases whatsoever of outbreak in churches, and there's a reason, because we've actually been extremely cautious. I mean, churches are 100 times cleaner and safer. Our church, in particular, I know, than your local Costco or wherever else people are going to get groceries and whatever else. So there's reason to feel safe at church, and that's what we're trying to communicate to the government and trying to communicate to you as well when the restrictions do loosen up. So sorry, go ahead.
I don't have anything else.
Is that it? All right.
Yeah, just some little coffee.
Oh, okay. Some pushback on the coffee thing.
No pushback.
No pushback. Just agreement.
Just I'd drink to that, or I'll drink to that.
Okay.
Double, I'm still working on my
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, unless Cho wants to tell us about how she takes her coffee, I guess that's it for today. We solved all of Canada's problems, and the U.S. as well, I'm sure, and we're good to go as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
No, seriously though, it is a blessing to know that in God's family we have comfortableness to be able to talk about these things in a way that is productive and honest, and give genuine pushback to each other, but at the same time loving each other through it. So
check your phone one more time.
Oh,
I just want to say that if you don't feel comfortable posting, like maybe you have some very intense concerns and you don't feel comfortable posting it, you can always send an email.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if you feel lonely or discouraged about the restrictions, and we're in Durham, so we can have 10 in our home, and our home is always open, and you're always welcome to come over and visit as long as you're not more than 4 people. Or if you want to bring a snowsuit, we can be 25 outside. I will put on my snowsuit for you.
There you go.
So.
All right. That is it. No questions.
All right. Love you.
All right. Love you. See you soon.